All right, hi everybody. This is a combination of the two videos that I did last week. This is about compound inequalities, and there are two types. There's an and an or type. And meaning the solutions have to work for both parts of the inequality. And this one and this part over here. The solutions must work for both. But when there's an or, the solutions only have to work for one part or the other part. It doesn't have to work for both. So here we go. Take a look at the inequality. Look at the left side where the GMM is. So you have 5 is greater than 4 minus 8x. Or we're looking for an x that satisfies this inequality. 1 is less than negative 7/4 times x. So I have to solve each part first, and I'll show you what we're going to do next. So as you can see, I took the first inequality from the GMM side, 5 is greater than 4 minus 8x, and I copied it over here. 5 is greater than 4 minus 8x. So you look at the right side, I subtracted 4 from both sides. I got negative 1/8. I'm sorry, I got a positive 1 is greater than negative 8x because the 4's canceled out. Then I divided by negative 8 on both sides, which gave me negative 1/8, was what I was talking about. And I had to reverse the sign because I divided by a negative on both sides. So the sign reversed. Now I got to go to the other part. 1 is less than negative 7/4 x and solve that. All right, so I took the 1 is less than negative 7/4 x, brought it over here, and I multiplied both sides by the reciprocal of negative 7/4, which is negative 4/7. And when you do that, these actually become 1, and 1 times x is x. On the other side, I had a 1 there, times negative 4/7 is negative 4/7. And I had to reverse the sign because I multiplied both sides by a negative 4/7. Now these are the two parts I need to write as the inequality. And since it's an order, I must write each one and put an or in between. So I'll type that in now. So I made this statement in class before. What I did was I took each of these parts on the right side and I typed them in over here on the left into the GMM part. And when I did that, I put the x first. So I had to then reverse the sign. So the negative 1/8 I put second. So I moved the x first. The less than sign became a greater than sign. As you see, I tapped that in. And then negative 1/8. Then I had to put an or because it's an or problem, an or compound inequality. And I took the second part, which I have circled in blue over here, and I wrote the x first again. It's just my preference. I like to put the variables first. And then I had to reverse the sign for that one, and then negative 4/7. If it's correct, we'll get some smileys hopefully, or at least a green dot. Okay, it worked. Now I need to graph this. And what GMM is looking for are the two numbers that when we solve, we got x on one side and the number on the other side. We have negative 1/8 and negative 4/7. Well, negative 4/7 is further left. But notice how GMM put it into the boxes here. It put them in the order I put them up here. That didn't matter, but in the number line, it does matter. Negative 4/7 has got to be on the left side because it is less. So I need to make sure that I have the numbers, because I need a negative 4/7. And then the negative 1/8 is further to the right because it's closer to 0 before you go and graph, right? So now, notice I have greater than negative 1/8. So it could be anywhere from here up. So I need it can't be equal to. So I'm going to use the open circle, and it's going to be shaded on the number line to the right. So I tapped on that. So I need to tap here. Good. Need to tap on the number line going to the right. Then it also says I'm looking for any number that's less than negative 4/7. So here's negative 4/7. Don't want it to be shaded, but anything that's less than that. Bingo. Now in this next example, please notice that negative 6 is less than negative 6 plus 2x. And then it says it has to be less than 3. So that's actually two parts combined. So negative 6 plus 2x has got to do both. It has to be greater than the negative 6, but less than the 3. So this is an and compound inequality. I'm going to recopy those on the right side. I'm going to solve each of those parts, and I'll show you what to do when you write the solutions and then graph. Okay, so look on the right-hand side. I had to add 6 to both sides first, ended up with 0 less than 2x. Then I divided by 2 on both sides, and I have 0 again is less than x. Then I take negative 6 plus 2x, and I solve that side. So I'm going to be adding 6 again to both sides of this part. So I get 2x. 2x, come on, pen. It's like I'm running out of ink here. Is less than 9. Now you're going to divide by 2 on both sides. And you end up with x by itself is less than 9 halves. So I could keep it as an improper fraction, which is really 4 1/2. Now this is and. These have to work together. So I have a 0 1/2, 4 1/2. 0 is the least of the two numbers. X has to be less, or actually 0 is less than x, but then x has to be less than 4 1/2. Notice where I got that from over here. So I brought that over. And this is how you want to type it into the GMM problem, because it's an and statement. Both parts. The x has to work for both. All right, as we continue, I already typed in this 0 is less than x, which is less than 4 1/2. Over here in my GMM side, I got okay by that with a green dot. Now I must look at graphing it. So 0 is less than 4 1/2, so I put that on the left. And I make sure 4 1/2 is on the right side. And I know that x has to be greater than 0. So if you read 0 is less than x, it's the same as saying x is greater than 0. So I want this right here, because it has to be in between both, and it can't equal either one. So both the circles are shaded or unshaded. They're empty circles. And I want everything in between. So here's a classic and solution. So again, all the variables at work, as you see up here in the inequality when it's written, the x has to be greater than the 0, but also is less than 4 1/2. That's an and statement. So let me ask you, in this one here, is this an and or an or inequality? It was pretty obvious. It says or. So you're going to solve both parts. You're going to write the answer in two different parts with the solution x is whatever or x is whatever. Then you graph it, and we'll see what happens. So I solved each of the parts, and I found that 40 over 7, 47ths, is less than or equal to x. So I put the x first. X is greater than or equal to 40 over 7. Now I could change 40 over 7. I could write that as 7 goes into 45 times. That's 35. So it could be 5 5/7. I could use it, change this improper fraction to a mixed number. Or I could just leave it as 47. You may do that also. And then the other part, I divided by 9, and I got negative 6/9. I had to divide by 3 on the numerator and denominator, so I got negative 2/3. And those are the two parts I must put in my solution box in my GMM, with an or in between. Now, a quick reminder, when you go to graph this in GMM, make sure you have the lesser of the two numbers on the left side of the number line. Because number line, remember, going to the left is less, going to the right is more. And it automatically loaded the 47ths in the left side. And I know that's positive, so it has to be greater than negative 2/3. So I need to take time and switch those. Okay, so I made sure the negative 2/3 was on the left. And I'm looking for all the numbers that are greater than or equal to 40/7. So I need the solid circle right there. So I'm going to tap 40/7. And I want everything that's greater than that. Notice it says greater than or equal to. So I'm going to tap to the right. Then the second part says, or the solutions can be, x has to be less than or equal to negative 2/3. So it can be equal to negative 2/3, and it can be less than negative 2/3. So notice the or can be one or the other. And that's the way the graphs usually look for the or. All right, in this last example, it says 2 is less than or equal to negative 2x plus 9. And then right next to it, it says it has to be less than or equal to 3. That's an and statement because the negative 2x plus 9 has to satisfy both of those. It has to be greater than or equal to 2, but less than or equal to 3. So I'll split them apart, solve each one, put them back over here, put them back together, and then graph. All right, so I solved both parts. And since it's an and, I need to look at the 3.5, which is 7 divided by 2, is greater than or equal to x. Then I look at the x is greater than or equal to 3, and the 3 is less. So I'm going to move that in the front. So I'm going to kind of combine these. I'm going to put 3 first. I'm going to put 3.5 last. Then x has to be in the middle. So think about this. The 3 I moved in the front, and the x I moved second, so I have to reverse this sign. So that sign becomes less than or equal to the way it's written. 3 is less than or equal to x. And then I put the x first in this one. And then 3.5 was last, so I had to flip that sign or actually reverse it. So that would become less than, whoops, come on, less than or equal to. This is what I'm going to tap in over my GMM side here. Okay, last part, last example I'll do for, we're going to graph this. So it has to be, can be equal to 3, but reading it backwards has to be greater than 3 also. So I need to get a solid circle. So it has to be equal to 3, but also greater than that. But the second part says, and it has to be less than 3.5 or equal to 3.5. So equal to 3.5 here or less. So both of it has to work for both, so it'd be everything in between. Okay, good luck with those. Great challenge problems, right? Hang in there. Watch out for when you multiply or divide by negatives. That's when you have to reverse the sign.